everyone. Welcome to Home and Away Jamaica, where we connect Jamaica with the diaspora. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us Mr. Trevion Manning. Mr. Manning is Director of Planning of the St. James Parish Council. Trevion, good morning, good day, how are you?
I'm good, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for answering our call to come on the show. What we want to focus on today, Trevion, is, the focus is for us on this show is the Jamaican community who many live outside Jamaica, but still want to participate in, the housing market in Jamaica. They want to invest, they want to build their own home, and also Jamaicans locally, Jamaicans who want to be involved. They buy that piece of land, they wanted to build, or there's an existing house and they want to extend. There is some hint of understanding that the process starts with the parish council, but I don't think people are quite clear because there are a number of agencies out there. We have NEPA, we have the Town and Country Planning Authority, and the approval moves through different planning agencies. We have NWA, National Water, we have Fire, and even the astute professional sometimes isn't quite clear on the process. So what we're going to ask you to do this morning is take into account who our audience is, bearing in mind, what someone's intention may be, whether it's greenfield, building on a piece of land, or existing construction or expansion to an existing unit. So if you could explain to our viewers and listeners, what is the role of the parish council when it comes to development?
Okay, all right. As I said, thanks for having me, and this is we do appreciate this opportunity for us to help to educate the public on our roles and responsibilities. And the first one is that we are no longer called the parish council; we are now municipal corporations, and that is for all what was called the parish councils island-wide. So we are all now municipal corporations. But our roles and responsibilities have not changed. If anything, they have expanded. So directly as it relates to the building application process or development application process, we have in two aspects. You have subdivision. For subdivision approval must come through the parish, the municipal corporation, or the local planning authority, as we are designated. That is when you have land and you want to have it divided to give, whether to give to relatives, your family. Parents died leaving a will, as we know with persons in the diaspora, they inherit land after their family has passed, and they are having trouble in getting the necessary documentation. So that is a process through the subdivision approval process. But specifically, once you have for the building, in terms, as you said, there are many agencies and many different things that you would have to deal with. All right, so let's begin. If you have a piece of land and you want to either expand on it, if you have an existing structure and you want to make it better, your parents are living in a house and now you want to expand on it, you would have to come through the authority. So the Building Act, and we have a new Building Act that was passed in 2016. So it's that Building Act now is an upgrade from what we had before, and it is incorporating the International Building Code. So that means that a lot of what you may see happening in the developed countries, the standards that we're using have increased. So what it requires is that any form of building that you're taking place, any modification, alteration, extension, must be first granted an approval by the municipal corporation. So in terms of your first step, I would advise persons, all right, if you look on your, if you have your proof of ownership is critical. That is, how do you know that you own the property? Is it that it is it in what we find is that some lands, you say you got it from your parents or grandparents, and you don't have any clear documentation that it is yours. You know, they gave it to you, but is your name on a registered title? So the area that is critical is to ensure that you have ownership of the property. What happens for family lands is that when they go forth and start building on family lands, and then you find that a brother, sister, cousin persons come in, and we have seen a lot of contention in this area. So we would ensure that you have, you know, speak with your attorney, or if you want to dialogue with the municipal corporation, we're always open to for what we call, you know, pre-submission dialogue. So you just come in for just a consultation to ask questions, or you can call us. So if you have the registered title in your name, that is one. You need a property tax certificate. That is to show that you have paid all your land taxes. So that is also a document that must be submitted with your application. And we also ask for a surveyor's ID report. That is where a commissioned land surveyor would go and do a survey of your property to make sure that the boundaries are where they're supposed to be. There is no encroachment or so forth, so that whatever structure you're proposing, the council can be sure that this is the land and this is what is on it. Now, back to the title before we move. A critical point with land titles, they are what are called encumbrances or restrictive covenants. Now, this is an area that causes some problem because you buy or inherit this property without knowing what your limitations are or what you can or cannot do with the property. So, Robert, you would be familiar being an attorney as well. So what you ask is when you look on the titles, you read those little fine prints on the bottom of the title. It tells you how far you can build from your boundaries, what type of, some of them will state single family dwelling, no commercial activity, no church, no school. It is for resort purposes, etc. So this, if you purchase a land and you say, what we see, a common one coming up now, you have setbacks from the boundary of, say, typically 5 feet for schemes, 10 in other areas, or say 20 feet from your front boundary. And when you go there, you find out that you have built closer, or the person, your contractor or whosoever, built and just tell you that, yes, man, you can go ahead. And when you come to us, we realize that you have breached, or the surveyor does the ID report. That's a critical thing that they always identify, is the breaches. So if we find out that you have breached your setback, then that's an issue with you going forward and how we would look on approval for that. So you would have to first try to rectify that to see if it is something that can be modified, and then you would have to go through that process of modifying your restrictive covenant, which the attorneys will tell you can take some time through the courts, a couple months onwards.
A year.
So that can cause you a lot of problem. And in some cases where you have built too close, we, the municipal corporation, because it has to be modified through the Supreme Court. So that is not something that is the municipal corporation's responsibility solely. What the courts want to see is that between NEPA and the municipal corporation is in agreement with the modification. And a lot of times we are not in agreement with it, because persons go ahead and build without our approval and then coming for us to say no objection. And one of the things that we have started to do, before you can get an objection from us, you would have to submit a building application for whatever the breach is. So you would have to first conform with our building act before we can say we offer no objection. So that I would tell you to check on those early, to prevent headache and heartache, because sometimes what you have to realize, persons will have to go and demolish the sections that are in breach in order to get to move forward. Other typical one is where you want to do a multifamily development, and in St. James, in the more urban areas like St. James and Kingston, we find a lot of persons now converting single family residential homes based on the demand as, you know, urban population increase, demand for housing increase, and foreigners do want to buy. They don't want a big property to manage. They want to just have a nice 2-bedroom apartment that can be rent. We see Airbnb taking up precedence more now, and if you're coming back, you want something easy to maintain. So you would have to have that covenant modified from a single family to allow for multifamily development. And in cases like that, we are, in a lot of cases, depending on the location, we don't have an objection to that. So that would have to be addressed. Moving into the plans now, you would need a complete sets of architectural drawings for when you're submitting. Once your proof of ownership is complete, that will include site plan, location, your elevations, floor plans that you would need an architect to prepare. Now that is where the challenges start in some cases, because of the persons who you may have designing your building, and how they ensure that some of them, they don't pay attention to the covenants, and when it after you have paid them and it comes in, then you find out that the council or building officers or my planning officers realize that it is not in conforming with the covenants, and then we have issues and it extends a period of time. A typical building application takes in our municipal corporation 4 to 6 weeks for approval. That is a simple single family extension or new construction, you know, because once it's there, it's easy for us to circulate. We meet once per month, so depending on when it's submitted, then, you know, 4 to 6 weeks. The time is extended depending on if we go there and see something that is not in conformance. Say you have a land that is on a slope or a hill, and the architect or draftsman prepares it showing it on a flat surface. So that is one of the challenges that we find too. They didn't indicate, when you do the measurements, you see it may be bigger than what it actually, how it can fit on the land and stuff like that, and how their method of sewage disposal, they may put something that is not in conformance with what we are using now. Some people used to the old time absorption pit, but that is no longer approved, allowed. We more go, the minimum we take is a tile field, and we go to reed bed, evapotranspiration beds, biodigesters, and from secondary to tertiary treatment systems. So that is to protect our groundwater and ensure that we don't have pollution of underground water sources. If it is connected to a centrally sewered system, that makes it even that much easier. So going through, we would say the plans, once you have your completed, that would say you contact with a registered architect or a professional draftsman, depending on the size of the structure. If it is over a certain size, now the government is requesting registered architects to prepare, and you need an engineer depending on the complexity of your development. So once you get all of those documents into us, we try and circulate it as fast as possible because we like to get the plans out, and the rates vary depending on the type of development. So we have for single family dwelling, the rate is $180 per square meter to submit to us. For multifamily, it's $225 Jamaican per square meter, and it goes up to as high as $315 for a resort development. So that is in the hotel sector. Yeah, so once you have the drawings and you, the architect or draftsman would have to know how to prepare those drawings to our standards. We have a checklist that tells you everything that should be included on the drawing. And it meets our standards and submitted, and we circulate it. If it's a commercial structure, it would have to go to the fire department. And if it's a residential, it would only go to our internal roads and works and public health. So the residential one is the one that have most of the challenges for your viewers. If you go for those who are doing multifamily, if you're doing over 9 apartments, then you would require environmental permit, and depending on it, you would have to send it to NEPA and then National Works Agency. So that is a much longer process. We try to keep that within 3 months. So that you would have to send it off to Kingston for them to do their evaluation, and that you may, for the environmental permit for discharge of the sewage, plus for the number of units. So that is a more complex process. So when it goes there, it will take you that much more time, you know. So multifamily development is a more extensive process, because even after you get the first building approval and erect the structure, you'd have to come back and apply for the strata approval, which is to say that you have done everything in accordance with the building, how to erect it, and NEPA's permit, NWA, etc. And once you get the strata, then you would have to go to the strata corporation or real estate board for their license to sell those apartments. And then, so that is a whole different process. So every building and development must come through the local authority. So if somebody is selling you a structure, or even in the same strata, an apartment building, it is better for you. You can always consult to ask us if there is an approval that has been granted for that development. So we would have, within the respective parishes, all of them would have to get the approval from each parish. So anything in St. James would come to the St. James Municipal Corporation. In Kingston and St. Andrew, the KSAMC, Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, etc. So it's just the parish that you have to get that responsibility from. So I think, Robert, that would cover. Is there anything that I didn't elaborate on that you want me to highlight?
I think you've covered fairly well the full spectrum from start to finish. So what I've gathered is that the first thing we need to establish for anyone embarking on this path is ownership, proof of ownership.
Yes.
As you said, in the diaspora community, many persons inherit land. Many times we have unregistered land.
Yes.
So, you know, persons have to take the first step of bringing that unregistered land to what we call first registration, getting your title. And that can take some time, confirming proof of ownership, root of title. And so there are those preparatory steps. Then you said we have to examine the title to determine what the covenants on the title are. We may have agricultural land, which I see in many instances, persons have land that's zoned as agricultural and want to build. So certain steps have to be taken to modify the use of that land before we even get to the parish council.
And in agricultural lands, if we have like farmstead development. So if you just want to, you have, depending on the location that you would be granted to put. So you say you have your agricultural land, but you want to live and farm the land. So you can get approval to put your house on a section of the land, ensure that it still remains in agriculture, but just that you will be living on the property and doing your farming at the same time. But that point is critical, the zoning of the area, and that is what you would find from us when you come to the municipal corporation. So the consultation, calling, checking before you go ahead and do anything, even purchasing, person show you this piece of land and say, oh, this is good and you can do anything you want with it. I would ask for, for caution and, do your background checks, because some of the time, this is why we have some unscrupulous persons from time to time. And, so I would advise you just to do some background check. You can always call the municipal corporations and to check and say, what is the zoning? What can I do with this land before you go ahead and purchase, So those are some steps that we would encourage you to take to ensure that the process is easier for you and aid in your decision-making process.
Well, Trevion, thanks. And I think the takeaway is, and I've seen it in my own experience, is that the municipal corporations are becoming more client-centric. there's more of a customer service and customer friendly approach. And I think what would serve our view as well, as you've said, is call, come in if you can, and where possible, get that no objection, get that pre-approval, get a sense as to what the boundaries are,
Yes.
of obstacles, potential obstacles, and pull whatever resources, professional resources you need together to make sure that the process is not a painful and costly one.
And that it can be, yes.
So, Trevion Manning, want to thank you again, Director of Planning of the St. James Municipal Corporation. Thanks for being here. I know you're a very busy person. So thanks for sharing with us some very invaluable advice and direction.
All right. Thanks for having me. And as again, your client, feel free to contact us if you're building. We'd recommend coming to St. James to do your development.
We know St. James is where, you know, we're seeing all the growth, tourism.
Yes. We are one of the fastest growing cities in the Caribbean right now. So, you know, yes, we're going, and we have increased some densities. So, I mean, in certain areas, persons can get higher densities. So, you know, that, you know, for developers are loving that right now. So, you know.
An expansion of the public sewage, which gives the opportunity for more density.
Right. So that is also something we are looking at improving as well. So, you know, feel free to contact us and we will be happy to assist where we can.
Thanks again.
All
and
right.
stay safe.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
TV, bam bam, on the street, bam bam.